Hi, I'm Din, and today I'm taking a sharp left and talking about some mental health stuff and drawing some mental health stuff. So if that's not anything you want to hang around for, then feel free to click off. This is more for me than it is for you, but if anyone else finds any kind of value in what I'm gonna talk about and draw and stuff, then that's great. I was abused as a child, so that's what this all deals with. I'm not typically very introspective in quote unquote public online, and I don't really like to advertise what I've been through and how I'm feeling and how I'm actually doing, but I also don't want to censor myself about it. And since I did a video 2 years ago talking about some more mental health related things alongside a mental health related piece of artwork, I figured I could kind of keep that going for my own sake, like for posterity and to look back on. Because, whether it's a conscious decision or not, I do feel that the art we do, the art we make, becomes a time capsule. It holds not only your skill at the time, but also the reason you created the art and what you were thinking about when you did it and what your emotional state was and stuff like that. There's something cool and worthwhile about that, and it's been interesting to me to revisit not only the piece that I did in the past, but also to hear myself talk about what was on my mind then. And there are changes from then to now that I want to capture for my future self too. So, all of that aside, this piece was actually prompted by my therapist. I'm seeing an expert now for my dissociation and complex PTSD and all of the other comorbid fun stuff that I have. And I really like her, and I feel optimistic about my treatment, which is great. I used to feel quite hopeless about my future, and I still kinda do. I have this persistent belief that I'll die anytime now, but I feel tentatively hopeful that maybe I won't die without feeling at least somewhat okay, which is a depressingly low bar to clear. Like, oh my god, bitch, you live like this. But that's what abuse does to you, and at least now I'm working on that with my therapist. We're still kind of in the early stages of mapping stuff out and such. But I often draw in the waiting room, and I've shown her my art before. So she asked if it was okay to give me art homework to try to explore some of the things that we're working on. And I said, yeah, sure. And she was like, okay, I want you to draw a picture of the small girl who was so badly hurt and abandoned. And I was like, oh, eesh, jumping right into the deep end, huh? So that's what this is. It's a self-portrait from when I was 9 or so. You see, I came prepared with lots of reference material. I don't paint humans often at all, and children even less. And I knew from the start that I wanted to include all of these hands, so I needed backup for that. I wanted to capture a feeling more so than a likeness, and what I remember most from the time that I'm working with here is the terror and the anxiety that I felt. I actually have a lot of amnesia related to this specific period, but the feeling of intense fear really sticks with me. And I remember doing so many things to try to feel safe, to try to predict what would happen around me, to try to minimize myself, to not be a target. I don't recall ever actually covering my eyes, ears, or mouth as I've drawn it here, but I think the concept is strong because it's kind of a universal gesture that I'm leaning on. I think most anyone could look at this and understand that this is from a child's point of view and that something bad is going on, because I'm drawing on very classic gestures. But like I said, that's deliberate. Like, the gestures are childlike and even a little bit exaggerated because I'm portraying a child, and children tend to gesture in a more exaggerated way. The composition is suffering a little at this stage though, with the set of arms around the stomach. I wanted them to reflect a sense of nausea and illness, and when I showed the work in progress to a friend of mine who's also gone through some stuff, She said that it looked like a self-soothing gesture, which wasn't the intention, but I really liked that interpretation, because it added a layer of sadness and pitifulness to the whole thing that I would have liked to keep in some ways. But I think including the fourth set of arms really muddied up the legibility of the rest, since the posture of them is so contrasting. It just became a bit confusing visually. So this is all in my first pass working on this piece, but I took a break after I finished mapping out some of the colors to come back to the next day, and with a fresh pair of eyes, you know, I really felt that, oh no, these arms, they have to go. So I started painting over them, and I tried a different approach with hands pressed to the floor as if bracing or crawling, because that also to me communicates this sort of pitiful and sad kind of vibe. And I do think that my attempt with this could have worked. At least it was a lot better than the stomach cradling pose, but I think ultimately, after thinking about it for some time, the whole thing just looked a lot better with only the 3 sets of hands. So that's what I went with. The symbolism is pretty obvious in terms of blocking out senses, but I also wanted to portray the sort of forced anonymity that comes with this experience. There's a loss of identity that happens in abused children that I think isn't talked about enough, about how we sort of collectively don't know who we are outside of being abused and the ways we try to cope with that. It leads to confused adults who feel aimless and hopeless, or risk-taking adults who try to fill that void in any way they know how. I've never personally been in the latter category, thankfully, but I feel empty and invisible a lot of the time, even still. It's kind of ingrained though, like it's for the better. You know, if I can't see them, they can't see me. But I wanted to negate that in my artwork with the spotlight that I kind of did that shines on her. Because it's like they're watching you anyway. Another thing that happened to me is that I became a caretaker because I was trying to protect my mother and I was trying to protect my siblings from the situation we were in. But when you become a caretaker as a child, you swap your needs for the needs of the people around you. And it's out of good intent, and it makes sense that that would happen. But that also erases you as a person. It distills your worth down into who you are to others instead of who you are just as you and to yourself. And it makes you feel subhuman if you can't help others around you. You really carry that with you for so long. I don't really feel human most of the time anyway, if I'm honest, but that's a whole can of worms. That's upsetting enough for another time, probably. I finished this a couple days ago, actually, and I had therapy today, so I showed my therapist this piece, and she really liked it. She had this expression of like, oh no, this is so sad. So I think I captured what I wanted well enough. Her first response was, it takes so many hands to block it out. And I like the way she said it. Like, in the canon of this image, this girl had to grow extra sets of hands to cope with her circumstances and the situation that she's in. We also talked about how I felt painting it, and I didn't really feel much of anything painting it, which is symptomatic of my emotional problems. But I do feel kind of emotional, sort of saying all of this and explaining my choices, and because knowing I'll put this on YouTube for anyone to see, it's kind of a forced vulnerability, and that's probably good for me, even if it feels kind of daunting. So with that in mind, mental health things will probably keep coming, because I do think this kind of format could be good for me to do. And I think talking about it like this is also good for me to do, particularly as I make my way through therapy for hopefully the last time this time, when I'm getting the care that I actually need, to see how things may change for me and how I may progress through all of that. But if that's not what you're here for, then, just skip this, it's all good. That said, though, I do want mental health to altogether be far less stigmatized than it is. And I have lots of opinions about the discourse around these things. So I'm sure this stuff will sneak its way into more than the dedicated videos. If you're still here, then thanks for listening. I hope this was interesting and that you enjoyed the painting. I am really happy with how it came out, particularly given how seldom I paint humans and how much practice I feel I still need with them. But I think I'm learning a lot about being more selective in where I spend my time on any given piece, and that it shows in a good way. So I'm looking forward to seeing how I'll grow as an artist, and with these kinds of subject matters, I hope I can grow in an interesting direction. I'm also looking forward to growing as a person, and hopefully be able to heal from some of the things that have happened to me. And it will be interesting to see, how all of this will affect me long term. But again, we're tentatively hopeful, so hopefully it will all work out. So thanks for listening to me ramble a bit, and I hope that 2023 will be kind to all of us.